Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Afternoons with the Ambassador, Council of One's Babylon 5 review. And with me today, I've got my fellow council members, Fiona Wolf, Mountains of Elysium, classic comics and author, and Dr. Adega Outlaw. And today, we are continuing our review of Season 2 of Babylon 5, Revelations. And guys, fellow council members, it is good to see you, and very quickly to the chat, Colin P. Smith, welcome, my friend. Good to see you, as always. Folks, how we doing?
Doing well.
Doing good.
Fairly special.
I have coffee. It's good.
We can tell you had coffee. Lots of coffee.
Yes.
You are really caffeinated.
I tell you, you're always feeling special.
Well, I'm a special kind of guy.
This is true. So, but yeah, today we this is a good episode. This is going to be a fun one. So, and someone's scraping something in the background.
Pardon? That was me. Pardon.
That's okay. You are the Mad Emperor, so it's all right. No worries. So, but yeah, this is good. This is a good episode. Revelations, episode 2, season 2. So, guys, I've done my thing. Where do y'all want to begin?
Well, this is one of the big arc episodes, and really kind of, I mean, it's a busy episode. I actually just watched it, so there's just so much going on because you've got the big kind of the main thing with Jakar discovering the shadows and warning everybody.
Yeah.
And then you've got these other, and then kind of the other kind of main plot, which is Sheridan with his sister. So we learn about his background and about his wife, who of course is missing. Then we've got the subplot with Garibaldi and him recovering, and him and also with Sheridan and the doctor, using the machine, from season 1 to revive him. And then you've got Morden and Malari. Yeah, so there's just a lot going on. But this is one of the first ones that really kind of, it's the first one of this season that's a big arc episode that really feeds into the overall, Shadow story.
This is true. Yeah, we get. Go ahead.
And like a woman, I noticed the first thing. Oh, look, it's love at first sight at the end. Oh, there you go. There it is.
So, yeah, as a classic, as you said, this is a very busy episode. There's a lot to dig into. So, honestly, we can jump off at any point. So, guys, like I said, I open the floor up. Where do y'all want to begin?
Probably want to start for me with Jakar, simply because he is one of the ones who changes the most over the series, not necessarily physically, because we could say Delenn does that, but his emotional and outlook on how himself and his people fit into things. And up until this point, he has always been sort of the bully, trying to protect his people by being overbearing and over anxious and very aggressive. But when his team gets their butt kicked, his eyes start to open up, saying, there's some things a lot bigger than just my world.
Yep.
Yeah, this is kind of the episode where he kind of starts that transformation from being basically kind of the villain of the show, really, to eventually being an ally.
I think Sinclair opened his mind somewhat when he told him you've become the Centauri, because the Narn themselves have started to take slaves in the universe. And you can see when Sinclair told him that, Jakar's mind just went, yeah. He realized that he was becoming what he hated. Then this episode, he starts to realize this is bigger than us. When he tells Londo, nothing kind of will end the feud between us but Centauri blood. But we have to put that aside for now because there's bigger issues at hand.
And boy, do they get hit by those bigger issues near the end of that season.
Yeah, very much so, because everything goes off the deep end for the Narns and everything in a big way, especially when the Centauri come in with those mass drivers and start just absolutely bombarding the planet from orbit. But yeah, as to this episode in particular, the thing that the plot line that I particularly liked and everything was Mr. Garibaldi finally coming back from near death, and he has the least likeliest of people and everything poke around in his head to find out who the heck shot him in the back, and Mr. Garibaldi does not react well. Let's just put it that way. Not to mention the rest of his team does not react particularly well. So,
and that's actually another thing is that feeding into that plot is when Sheridan, talks to President Clark, and we kind of get our first hints that in this episode that Clark is potentially corrupt and maybe he's up to no good.
Yeah, right. Very true. Well, and honestly, I'm just gonna say we only see like Clark maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the entire run of the show, and at least within the seasons that he's a part of. And every time you look at him, you're like, this guy is as crooked as a snake, except a snake has more charm. Just saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, it is a hard thing to have your trust broken by someone that you thought you knew. And I think for Garibaldi, this wasn't professional. This was personal. The way he talked to this guy and everything, he's like, I gave you every break. I treated you better than my own family. I taught you everything I know, and this is what you do to me. And the guy just doesn't give a damn. For him, loyalty means nothing.
Oh, man.
I mean, and, well, okay, let me put it this way. Personal loyalty to another person doesn't mean anything to him. The only loyalty that matters to him is the loyalty to your affiliations. And I'm sorry, that I cannot stand.
It just does make me think, though, real quick, that what if Bester and the others gave that one guy a really sad background to get Garibaldi's attention? Because if you notice, Garibaldi tries to give people that are down on their luck a second chance. So that's like twisting the knife even further.
Garibaldi and the Psi Corps have that love, hate, really hate relationship. Yes. There's 2 times in the series where he's rescued by someone in the Psi Corps. This episode has one, and later on when they're about ready to, as he would say it, turn his head into a canoe with a plasma rifle. And he was rescued by Lita. But also he gets played over and over again. He has probably the biggest tragedy lifestyle out of any of them, except for maybe Londo.
Yeah, I would agree with that, honestly.
He gets betrayed over and over. People, we had the episode early on in season 1 where the Major came and accused him of terrible things. He was friends with her father before he died, and he just about went back into the bottle.
Oh, yeah,
Major
Kimmer.
Yeah. But no, he has quite the tragic existence, and the repeat, and even into the books afterwards, Garibaldi spends almost his whole life fighting Bester in the Psi Corps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Psi Corps trilogy expands on that, especially the last book.
That's what I was alluding to. He finally wins, He gets a nice CEO job in the corporation. He has a wonderful wife, and he puts an end to Bester.
Yeah.
But it's a long road. Very difficult for him.
Yeah. And just very quickly to the chat, Pixelay, good afternoon, my friend. Good to see you as always. Hope everything, whatever waiting room you're in, I hope it goes smoothly. I hope it goes well. So, but yeah, honestly, and it was a very telling moment for Garibaldi when he wakes up and Ivanova and Sheridan walk in, and he's got that look on his face. He's like, I don't know you. And Sheridan's trying to be very cordial, very polite to the guy and everything. And I can understand Garibaldi's mindset in that moment. He's out of it. The only two people in the room that he actually knows are Franklin and Ivanova. That's it. The one guy that he really knew, that he really trusted, is gone now, because we find out, well, obviously we found out in the last episode that Sinclair has been is over on the Minbari homeworld, and he's not going to be coming back for the foreseeable future. So I can understand Garibaldi's reaction in that moment, because if you're coming out of a coma, or if you're blindsided with being introduced to a brand new person that's completely foreign to you, you're going to be like, I don't know you. You seem like you're okay, but I don't know if you're going to be someone that's going to stab me in the back again.
Actually,
Go ahead,
sorry.
Alex, please.
No, I think JMS inserted that in as Garibaldi represented the audience. Sheridan was the new main character, and it's, we don't know you, we don't know what you're like, and his response is, I think we're going to get on just fine. I think that was speaking to the audience just as much as to the story itself.
Yeah, I think that might have been a little bit of a fourth wall break, although it was a very subtle one. It was actually a very well done one and everything. And I can appreciate that. I will say the arc with Chikara, as y'all were talking about a few minutes ago. Obviously, we open up with him in shadow-controlled space. We get our first look at a shadow fighter and everything, and we realize just how, even though they're relatively small compared to the capital ships, how truly massive these things are, because even a shadow fighter is bigger than a Narn heavy fighter. And it's go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll just say, and comparatively, it took 2 fighters to take out one of theirs. So, yeah.
And I think during the war, it's 3-1, I think, was the ratio that Sheridan mentioned. For every one of ours, or for every one of theirs that's lost, we lose 3 of ours. So they are a very tough opponent.
Yeah, well, obviously they operate off some sort of bioorganic or techno-organic technology, which I wonder if we'll ever reach that point. I guess maybe we may someday, but it'll probably be long after we're all gone, but who knows?
The thing about fighting shadows, too, is that since their systems are based off of organic life, and they do have a type of telepathic abilities, there is really no need at all for them to ever be in one of their ships.
Yep.
Or very rarely. So when you're fighting shadows and taking down their ships, you're not hurting them. You may be taking some of their resources, but the only time we really ever see them killed, or at least the first time, is when Sheridan nukes them. And you can see how dramatically that affects them, to where they pull back, because they actually had some of their kind die. And it wasn't until towards the end of the war where they started to feel it. So going in and taking 1 or 2 of these fighter ships, to the shadows, it's nothing. And it's very small victories compared to the loss that has occurred for it.
And even in their capital ships, they don't actually use themselves. You find out later through other things that they use other organic components.
Yeah, their whole technology is based on that. It doesn't run unless it has some type of semi-sentient life incorporated into it. And I don't know if any of you had read the book about Anna Sheridan when they went to the planet. It's all about how they were captured by the shadows. And the first things they found were little objects and lights that ran off of insects. They were incorporated into their machinery that made them run, and it baffled them. And then we come to find out later, and this is also through the books, one of the greater forces in the universe is totally based off of shadow technology, and that would be, we'll get into them later, the technomages. Everything they do, all the stuff that they have, is only because there have been at least one life taken so that a technomage could be made.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Not know that.
And again, that's why I'll link that thing again. But yeah, even the Technomage trilogy really goes into a lot of that and why
That's
they
my favorite
initially.
out of all of them. I
Yeah,
love Galen's story.
it even ties into across the whole series, like when they initially left in season 2 and what they were doing throughout the whole thing, and then Galen coming back to help Sheridan with Crusade and a few other things, and even into where they left Babylon 5 and Veer was the ambassador to Babylon 5 at the end. So yeah, the books are fun. I'll go get that link again. I'll put it in there.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Right.
Yeah, we'll get a reduction to the Technomages and everything next episode for sure. I think obviously because geometry of shadows. But the other interesting part of this episode is Sheridan having to come to some sort of conclusion over the death of his wife, because obviously we've got his sister Lizzie there, and we get the inference that apparently Lizzie had known Anna for a long time before John and Anna got married and everything. And I'll say this, I understand what his sister was trying to say, like, John, it's been 2 years, you need to let this go. But he's like, I'll turn around and expect to see her there, and she's not there. He's still mourning, he's still grieving. And the interesting thing about that is, and this is something I've learned through my seminary education and so on, grief does not have an expiration date per se. The grief you feel over the loss of a loved one may eventually diminish to the point where you can live with it, but it's always there with you. And I think for John, he's not only got grief, but he's got guilt. And honestly, I think his reaction and his conversations with his sister are probably very accurate. They're very real. And I appreciated the fact that they dealt with this in a very mature, well, obviously they would obviously, but they deal with it in a very realistic way and a mature way.
Well, you said a key point there too. It wasn't the grief that was crippling to him. It was the guilt.
Yeah.
And in this episode, the guilt is proven to be unfounded.
Yeah, because he was blaming himself for her going off, but she was even the book explains a little bit more, but even that video did. She decided to call it off. It was her decision, not because he missed any date. So, guilt is a powerful demotivation with certain things to be able to move past things.
And I think the worst thing for him, as she said, he cannot make amends for that guilt, so it keeps feeding on itself.
Yeah, and the fact that he's burying himself in work and everything when they're in that scene and everything where they're having dinner, I think at the open air cafe or whatever it's called and everything there on the station, and she's like, John, we need to talk about this. And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. He's like, it's still too hard for me to do so. That for me was very telling, was very visceral and everything, because I imagine all of us here and everything have had to deal with the loss of a loved one to one extreme or another, or one level or another. And I can relate to how John feels. Everything. And, him finally getting the revelation, obviously the title of this episode, Revelations, that it wasn't entirely his fault. The fact was, and the only way he could find out was because of that portion of that comms communication between Liz and Anna, that she was planning on leaving anyway. And I think that was the only way he was going to be able to heal, so he could move on. So
it's also the first of 3 parts of a foreshadow. It's the foreshadowing of the future events where he has to learn to let go of that guilt and move on from things that he loved, where the next incident comes when he has to let go of another thing he loves, which is Earth Force.
Yep.
And then the third thing is when Delenn approaches him and she says, I have to go. And he's wondering why. It says, because you need to be dangerous. Not in so many words, but it was in order for him to accomplish the things that he needed to do, there had to be something he had to either temporarily or permanently let go of so that he could be exactly what he needed to be at the time.
Yeah.
Pretty much like that ceremony they go through after they split from Earth, where they have to give up something before they can move on.
Yes. Very
Actually,
true.
I just thought of something there when you mentioned about he buries himself in work. In 3 or 4 episodes, is it in Distant Star, we see his desk has actually begun to pile up with work. I wonder, has this moment helped him get over that, so he stopped burying himself in work after this, which caused that build-up when Captain Maynard comes to visit him
Yeah.
with the explorer ship, because he tells Susan, "You see this desk? This is not me." So he had buried himself in work, had dealt with all those things. Now that part of him was gone, and he was starting to explore other parts. So he wasn't as deep into his work. And that's just a thought that came across there.
Yes.
No.
And more girly observation, Delenn and Sheridan balance each other, so when they're each other's in like kind of a funk, they can pull each other out.
That is true. Well, of course, we get the reveal or the revelation of Ambassador Delenn. She has gone through her transformation. She goes from creepy, scaly woman to Minbari with hair. So,
And not as Sakura described her as a butterfly.
Oh yeah, that the fact that they use that kind of joke to pull out the
Jack.
Garibaldi's second, the traitor. Like, you gotta come see. Look at Delenn. She has wings and everything.
Yeah.
Oh
Well,
God.
Well, and the interesting thing is Lanier trusts Franklin enough to call him in because, well, obviously, but Franklin was like, "Why don't you call one of your own physicians in?" And Lanier's like, "You'll see why. You'll understand here in a minute and everything why I had to call you instead of calling in one of our own, because it would take a human physician and everything or a physician that has the background that Franklin does, everything, to figure out what has happened to Ambassador Delenn, everything coming out of that cocoon. I'll just say it, everything. The post cocoon makeup, everything, where she's all scaly. That was some really good makeup work on her. For a show that was kind of low budget, they did a good job.
Oh yeah.
I wonder, did Lanier approach Franklin because he didn't trust any Minbari physicians? They have had issues with them, and so I wonder, had that anything to do with it, more so than Franklin being...
Well, I see that, but there's
Minbari
also Go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
So the Minbari are pretty big on racial purity and everything, so I don't think they would have taken her transformation very well.
Well, that, and it also reminds me, Franklin did talk to Delenn about what he did during the Earth-Minbari War and how he didn't take advantage of, giving away pertinent data to be used as weapons. So
That's true, yeah.
And he is also a doctor of multiple species, not just humans, where Minbari are just Minbari. So if there's an odd physiology or something that's unusual, someone who is versed in being able to see multiple types or possible systems that a different life form would have, he would probably be the best at being able to decipher what is normal and what is abnormal and figure out what's going on with Delenn.
Yeah, that's a very astute observation, Adega. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, because the truth is, despite all his faults and everything that'll come to light eventually, Franklin is he's one of the more trustworthy people there on the station. He's one of the people that you know where you stand with them and everything, regardless of what's going on. And that's a rare thing, especially in a physician. Well, I guess you could say for a physician, it would be almost expected.
I wonder, for me, Franklin is what I think is called like a true seeker. He looks for healing above his position, above anything, which is why he helps the telepaths, why he sets up the clinic in down below. And what kind of another point during the war, he approaches Sheridan with an off the books kind of thing out. This is kind of off the books. We need to help Mr. Garibaldi. Without their interaction during the war, I don't think he would have approached him. And I think it's their backstory is what helped there.
Yeah, because if you remember in the TV movie in the beginning, they're actually together on that one mission and everything to try and hash out a peace agreement between the Earth and the Minbari and everything, which unfortunately goes completely sideways. And yeah, I think that's a very likely possibility, because if it had not been for Franklin going to Sheridan and saying, "Look, we've got this device on the station," and he's like, "I want to try and use it on Mr. Garibaldi to wake him up," and then eventually Sheridan shows up and he's like, "You're not doing it on your own." He's like, "We'll split the risk." And that says something a lot. That says something very telling about John Sheridan, because even though he doesn't know Garibaldi, he's like, it's not going to look particularly good on his resume. Even though I think that's a kind of tongue in cheek.
He's the kind of officer that'll get in the trenches with his guys, basically.
Precisely, yeah.
And come the Inquisitor, where they said, "Are you prepared to die alone in the dark without fanfare or trumpet?" Mm-hmm. Sheridan is that man. Delenn is also, we find that out. So they are the people. His action here foreshadows what he has to do in the future to sacrifice.
Yeah. And to me personally, that's why Babylon 5 will stay with me rather than other stuff, because again, it's hard. It showcases what true heroism is.
Well, yeah, because that moment between Shakar and Londo, after Shakar gets back from his mission, he's like, I think, I can't remember which one of you said it, when Shakar says, "The only thing that will satisfy the feud between our peoples is Centaurian blood." He's like, right now, there's something worse than our feud between our two races. And, I must say that, this might be an interesting rabbit hole to go down. What if Londo had not snitched to Morden about the Narn sending a heavy cruiser to Zahadum? What could have happened and everything? Do y'all think that would have changed anything? Would it have not changed anything? What are y'all's thoughts on that?
It's hard to say. You would think maybe they might have had time to get away and warn people, but who knows?
Either that, or the Shadows could have reoccupied Narn and used it as a base again.
I think we see this in a couple of episodes where Sheridan, they get Mr. Morden and keep him in custody, and Delenn says, do nothing, we don't want the Shadows to know. Had the Narn gotten out, everyone would have known, and the war would have happened before they were ready.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and like she said, the Narns would have been a dead race instead of dying, basically.
Well, unless, everybody was able to put a clamp down on this quick enough to where everybody and their mother didn't go blurting, "The Shadows are back! The Shadows are back!" If, it's very like... I like to do the what-ifs occasionally. I don't do them very often, but I think maybe if everybody had some advanced warning, maybe things could have turned out maybe just a little different. It's very hard to say, because that's a long rabbit hole to go down, because there's so many twists and turns there, with Morden being on the station all the time, or seemingly almost all the time. And of course, you've got Kosh there and everything. And of course, him saying one word and everything to Shakar, tell who you must, but tell no further, because we're not ready yet. I think if Kosh stepped in, if the ship had been able to get back in time, and the Vorlons had applied pressure to the rest of the races, saying, "Hey guys, we're not ready for this. It's fine that but don't go broadcasting it to everybody and their mother. But that's a what if and everything. I don't know what y'all think.
Well,
Yep.
the actual Cold War between the Shadows and Vorlons could have escalated faster, kind of like what you see near the end of season 4, where they just don't care. They're putting out their big guns everywhere. It's like scorched earth policy.
Yeah, if you think about it, so if they did find something, I guess they would have probably informed the Centauri government. The government would have informed Jakar. Jakar informs the council, and then at that point, Delenn and Kosh would know, and then they would basically probably reveal what they know since it's coming out anyway, and say we've got to keep this quiet, keep this hushed up, because as you say, we're not ready to do this yet. So it may, in the end, it's still that may have postponed the war anyway because they may have put it out that we don't know who it was or something like that.
Well, I think, Colin brings this up.
Yes.
It's highlighted. I think there's a big duplicity with the Vorlons. And Sinclair was the first one to figure this out. And you don't see it in the story. But Sheridan was able to see what happened to Anna because the Vorlons were watching. They had always been watching. They could have at any time wiped out the Shadows after the last war. They had full capability of doing it, but it wasn't about that. It was about manipulating the little races. It was about their little pet projects. Some of the other stuff that was in the books is how the Vorlons had been on Earth for many hundreds of years. They had a base on Saturn or on Venus, and they were coming to Earth and manipulating and altering and doing some testing. They even made a whole society of mutated humans on another world. They were full on capable, and for them to say they weren't ready yet, that was a lie.
Yeah.
It wasn't a matter of them being ready. It was a matter of them thinking that everybody else was ready to do their bidding because they had been brought to the brink of submission to the order of the Vorlons.
When you see how much the Vorlons react over the death of one, they were more concerned about themselves being hurt than the younger races. I agree with Adega. They could have wiped out the Shadows at any time.
Well,
Yeah, they could.
even who was it? Like even with Sahadum and a certain someone that catches Sheridan at the end there, he was saying that even the Shadows were just giving him lip service, but they don't really remember why they come here anymore.
Yeah, Lorianne. Yeah, Vienna. There is no such thing as spoilers for this show. It's 20 years old, so we can say names and plot points and everything. It's not gonna kill anything, honestly. Yeah, the thing for me is Sheridan said it right on the nose. You all had the capability. He saw the planet killer, the footage from Marcus's mission and everything. I think it's in season 3 or whatever, or season 4 maybe. And they see the footage of the planet killer, and he's like, "You all had the capability to destroy the Shadows, yet you didn't. You've let entire worlds burn. You've let countless billions and everything be wiped out, all for your ideology." And your ideology of perfect order. Well, guess what? There is no such thing as perfect order. You do the best you can, and the rest you just chalk up to life experience. And I think, looking at Kosh's actions and inactions, I always had the deepest respect for the character of Kosh. Still do. And I think because he knows what has to be done. He knows what's coming, because we can wager he was probably alive during the first war with the Shadows, maybe even longer than that. We don't know the lifespan of a Vorlon. They could very likely be immortal and everything, because we see how difficult it is to kill one of them, except unless you're like a Shadow or whatever. But Kosh probably knew that they had the planet killers we don't know when they developed that type of technology, but we could probably wager that they've had it for several hundred years, if not longer, several thousand years more than likely. And the crazy thing is, the Shadows have that exact same technology. They have a plant killer as well. It's just of a different type. It's a death by 1,000 cuts, whereas with the Vorlons, they took a little inspiration from the first Galactic Empire.
Firing my laser. Kaboom! There you go.
So, but yeah, this episode is very revealing about a lot of things. Obviously, I mean, I know the title might be a little on the nose, but I think it's very appropriate because it's about personal revelation and about galactic revelation on a galactic scale. Because Jakar knows the truth, but he doesn't have enough evidence to support it. At least not yet. But eventually that will come. And for John, he's having to come to the realization that his wife's death was not his fault. It happened. It's extremely unfortunate, but ultimately it was not his fault. She was gonna go anyway. Although I wish they could fix the continuity error in terms of the appearance of his wife. Just saying, but that's you get this very attractive young woman. We don't know who she is, and then a few seasons later, oh, it's Melissa Gilbert from Little House. Like, what the heck?
Although, if I remember correctly, they did fix it in that black and white kind of flashback moment. But
yeah, they did
fix it in the actual episode itself.
It was all congruent except for this episode.
Yep.
I think
That's-
JMS. Sorry.
I was going to say that's the same actress that played Tasha Yar's sister on Next Generation too. Actually,
Was it really?
Yeah.
Okay, she must be a little bit older because she looked a little bit older in the face. Still pretty, but just older in the face.
Actually, I think JMS wanted to insert in the reshot stuff into the DVDs when they were coming out because he said we know the actress was different, but he said he left her in because for royalties or for I can't remember what the reason was. It was something in the Lurker's Guide, but they were going to change it to keep it all congruent and keep it all looking correct.
Yeah. But it's a little nitpick. It's not a major one, and everything. So for me, it doesn't break the show altogether. I mean, it's one scene and one episode early on in the second season. Then later on, you get Bruce Boxleitner's actual wife. So, well, guys, is there anything else about this episode we want to discuss? Or have we? Go ahead, man. Please.
The fact that the Narns as the humans are wiser than we knew. Obviously, they read Irish poetry. I had to say.
Yes. yes. The poem. Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember, is this the episode where Jakar's reading the beast that slouches towards Bethlehem while Delen's like touching her face?
It is. Yes,
it's The Second Coming by William Butler Yeats, isn't it?
Yeats. W.B. Yeats. Good Irishman.
Yeah, I love that scene. It's actually one of that because he does such a great reading of it.
He does, yeah. Well, it's Andreas Katsoulis. The man was a type. The guy
you could listen to him read off a phone book and you'd be happy.
Kind of like Vincent Price or Boris Karloff, or maybe even someone that I've talked about recently, Orson Welles. Unless he's talking about pee or wine.
I guess one other thing about this episode is, because they cleared the deck with the guilt over Anna, it enabled Sheridan to actually look up and like, oh my God, who's that pretty lady? What is this?
Yeah, because this is our introduction to a hybrid Delenn. So, well, let me ask you guys, what did y'all think of her appearance? From Minbari, pure Minbari to hybrid Minbari.
Well, when I first watched it on cable, I liked the fact that they hid what her transformation looked like for the, because they kept her old look for in the credits or whatever, or the opening stuff initially. And then after they showcased her, then they switched it over. But, I thought she looked very pretty. And I wanted to kick all the rest of the Minbari Like, why are you doing this? You guys are idiots. She's pretty. Very woman deduction there. Yes.
They are anti-follicle. They're anti-hair. You have follicles now. We don't like you anymore.
We don't know what you are anymore, Dylan. Are you truly one of our own kind? Bitch slap! Bitch slap! She's more of your kind than it ever was. Bitch slap!
Remind me never to be too close to Fiona Wolf. Finally. Holy moly.
Well, you're 3 spaces away from her. I think you're about as far away as I can get you, Dega. Unless I remove both of you from the stream, but I don't want to do that.
Well, sometimes you just like there's genuine emotional reactions, and yeah, like younger me was like, but she's such a pretty lady. Why are they being such jerks? Why?
Well, as we've established in the previous episode, the Minbari are kind of pissy and trivial, and well, I'll just use another descriptor: anal.
I mean, even later on, Sheridan will make a joke during that God, when Straczynski tried to do the little like snippets where with Lockley and everybody else and the Centauri prince and everything. But there's this one point where he's like, "Yeah, it took us a while, but they finally put chairs in here." So yeah, he's slowly doing battle with Minbari architecture.
Right.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the giant conference rooms where it's a conference room and a balance state and a bridge and everything else in between.
Yes.
Well, there's that, and then there was also with the it was one of the Lost Tales,
yes,
where they were on the ship where they were going into not hyperspace but quantum space, and he sits down next to the reporter and says, "Yeah, we had to have these installed because they weren't so big on having chairs." That was one of my favorite scenes in all of Babylon 5. Is that a new dress?
I think that reporter was the doctor on SG-1, wasn't she?
Yes.
So, yeah, because let's be candid here. When it comes to Minbari aesthetics and what's interior design, they're kind of Spartan. You know, you're in the middle of battle. You're like, do I really have to be staying during this whole freaking battle? Can't I just have like a stool or a chair or something, please? I mean, for heaven's sake, they have more chairs and everything on the White Star ships than they do any place else. But you can't even sleep properly.
Oh yeah, Avada warned me about these things.
Of course, we'll get to that when we get to that.
But yes. I thought episode 2 did establish some things early on. You know, like at least on Sheridan's side, the obvious attraction he initially felt toward, because he was telling his sister, like, I was just there. It's like my mouth was open. Like, what is this? Yeah, that's the best.
Yeah, Captain Woohoo John Sheridan. Eventually.
Oh, yeah.
Or,
yeah.
You know, let's see, Captain John Woohoo Sheridan. I think is someone called it in here. The orange lover.
John Newcomb Woohoo Sheridan.
Oh man, and his whole thing in relation to Lanier, like that just showcases like some of the more, like, this is the Minbari courtship rituals, just to make sure we definitely want to sleep with you. Yes. Oh my God. Wait, you cut off what now? Oh no.
Access to the family.
I like when Ivanova shows off the human rituals to the Mati in a few episodes.
Oh, yes.
You know,
you
there
can put
are
it
a few
back on your
times
head.
in television where things become a little embarrassing for me to watch, and that's one of them.
But yeah.
I know, right?
But
Funny,
but
but embarrassing.
Franklin dance is so funny though. Franklin's like, you can put a bag on your head and do it for Babylon 5, and she's like, perfect. He doesn't know a damn thing about our rituals.
Yeah, he doesn't know a thing about sex.
JMS is a great writer, but comedy isn't really his strong point.
That's true, but you know what? I would much rather have a guy who is a talented writer try and fail at comedy than have some of the comedy that we have nowadays,
Well, I
which
think
is just a giant steaming pile of
Like zooty zoot zoot.
oh god,
I
well,
like hey you shut your face. I like Penn and Teller.
yeah,
Zooty.
they're pretty
Zoot,
fun,
zoot.
and they're pretty equal opportunity on what they comment on too. But I think that's the reason why I brought in Peter David for the Londo Malari Wives episode, because
Yes.
that's when the humor is very on point.
Oh man. Yes. I have to agree, you know. And even that little jab and everything between Jakar and Londo, there's just a touch of humor there. The only thing that will satisfy the feud between us is Centauri blood. And Londo's like, well, it's nice to know we're appreciated. I'm sorry, it's just those little quips. It's
Yeah, Londo always has some wry comment for everything.
well, yeah, because let's just be candid here. Amongst the Centauri, he's probably the sharpest one they have, which is why they eventually make him, well, he's kind of coerced into being emperor because of a certain alien race that everybody detests and thinks sucks and smells like cheese.
Oh no, they drilled those things into my head. Oh great, I got this keeper on my shoulder. Don't look at it. Don't look at it. You will not touch fear. Don't look at it.
If I had one of those things, I would just never resist poking it in the eyeball.
Oh man.
That's true.
Anyway, I got to scoot. I
Yeah.
have to leave early today, so
Well,
I
we're
am
gonna
going to
go.
sign off.
All right, Dave, good to see you. We're gonna go and wrap up here in just a minute anyway, because I think we've pretty well dissected this one. So, thanks for being here. And you didn't hear me say thank you. Inconsiderate jerk. I'm kidding. All right, folks. Well, I think, like I said, we're gonna wrap up here. I want to thank everybody for popping in today. My fellow council members, Fiona Wolf, Classic Comics, Mountains of Elysium, and Adega. So. We'll be back next week with another installment. To the chat, Colin P. Smith. I know there were several people. We had like almost 9 people in here. So to all of you that were watching and didn't get a chance to interact in the chat, thank you all for watching. Regardless, those of you that'll catch us on the replay, make sure and hit that like button, share this out. And if you're not subscribed and you like what's going on with this channel and everything, and want to become a part of this community, hit that subscribe button as always. Guys, is there anything you want to plug before we sign off?
Yeah, I'll plug my channel. My channel's Classic Comics. I cover, obviously, big focus on comics, but also movies, TV, pop culture type stuff. And I just did several videos on the big DC fandom this past weekend.
yeah.
Please go check those out.
Yeah, I actually watched a couple of those. That was you did a good job on those, bud, truly.
Thank you.
So, Fiona, Mountains, anything you want to?
I mean, you can look at my channel. I mostly ramble about reading and writing things that I find interesting. Like, please give me uplifting stuff to read, please, for the love of God.
Indeed. Mountains, anything you want to plug before we go?
I'm just working on I've been working on a video on the best science fiction crew, and all the votes are in. It's going to cause consternation. I'm halfway through the editing, and hopefully I will have that up soon.
Excellent. Well, as for me, folks, I do have a couple of projects I am working on. I will actually be going live this Friday with a brand new ambassadorial editorial, and this one, I don't know how exactly to phrase it, but it's going to be a little bit hot. And I'm also still working on my my other project and everything called Ray Who. So that'll be coming up and everything within the next few weeks. I'm still having to work things around my new work schedule. And then actually later this evening, I will be over on Mr. CCDV's channel and everything, talking about what the church can do to bring its relevancy back into the world, I believe is what the topic's going to be. And that'll be at 6 p.m. Central Time. So hope to see y'all then. There will be no ambassadorial wing this weekend and everything. Madam Ambassador's birthday is this week, so taking some time off. I will be back next month and everything with some more live streams and everything. Going to do some watch parties next month for being it's my birthday and everything. So, but until next time, folks, y'all have a great day. And this is the Ambassadors signing off.